And good morning. We are back here on KFYO Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin. And on the phone with us this morning is Congressman Jodey Arrington. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning, Dave. Matt.
Well, are you in Washington, D.C. today?
I am. I was in the district for the last few days. Had some good dialogue with our local and state law enforcement officials about the impact of the border crisis, and it's real, and it's in our neighborhoods, and it's a crisis that they can't bear themselves. They're overwhelmed and under-resourced. And I'll tell you who's not under-resourced, the cartels. And they're the ones that have operational control of the border.
Yeah.
Sadly enough.
Well,
But we could change that.
I totally agree with you. But bring us up to speed. The president says that he does not want to declare this an emergency and try to obtain funding that direction. Explain to us what that is about. Why does he not want to do it that way? And if he were to, could he? Do you think he could legally or successfully obtain the funding necessary?
Yes, I believe, to your last question, that he has the legal authority to declare a national emergency. I've read the law, and in one scenario, you'd have to have the military deployed. He already does. In fact, he's going to increase the number of military, which makes me think he's preparing for that declaration. I think he wanted Congress to solve it. I mean, our lawmakers and our lawmaking body ought to be a problem-solving group that looks at these things and recognizes that with and understands the facts on drugs, gangs, and crime, and works together to solve them and move our country forward. It hasn't happened. It's hard to do that when somebody says barriers are immoral. I mean, when you put a stake in the ground like that, you're so irrational, you can't really negotiate. That's why I've said publicly, and why I've talked to the president and his folks about declaring a national emergency, because I think that's the only way, and it's a legitimate way, to put the infrastructure in place and not have to shut the government down, because I think that's already cost us more than he's asking for in the border wall funding. So I don't know. I think he just wanted to put the burden on Congress, which is where it ought to be. But at some point, I think you would be derelict in your duty as the commander-in-chief if you believed there was a crisis and you believed you had the authority to fix it, even if it was unilateral. And I think that's where he's going to end up. So that's where I think he's going to end up, and I think he's going to try to make that case in the State of the Union tomorrow night.
So, Congressman, supposedly the Senate's getting together. They've got a group of guys trying to get together to make something happen. Let's just say that they did get something that both the president and the Senate was happy with and could get the 60 votes on. Would Nancy Pelosi even be willing to play ball?
I don't see that she would. I mean, the one comment, she made some comment the other day about some military-style fencing that she said if he wants to call that a wall, that's fine. Look, she's going to try to find a way to hedge if we do get a wall, because she's scared of her radical left open border people. And I think that's one piece. I think the other component, sadly enough, is she doesn't want this president to get a win.
Right.
And I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. It's shameful if you want someone in a political party to lose, and not to be focused on how do we make America win. And that's one of the big cultural dysfunctions of Washington. It's one of the things I can't stand about politics at the national level. But certainly Nancy Pelosi, I think, has been case in point there. She'd rather Trump lose than America win at this point. And I'm a guy that doesn't believe the wall is the panacea. I don't think it's the silver bullet. I think it's just a component. I'm an all-the-above guy. I'm for boots on the ground. I'm for sensors and other technologies. And I'm for turning the magnets off and closing the loopholes. And I think if you did that, you'd solve 90% of the problem.
Well, if you're talking about closing the buffet on this side of the border,
Yeah.
It seems to me like if we did that, we wouldn't have to have a wall because there would be no reason for them to come over. But to me, and I've said all along, these are for the most part desperate people leaving desperate situations, and putting a wall up there is not going. When they see that just on the other side of the wall is the buffet, they're not that wall. That wall is not going to stop them. They'll find a way over.
You're absolutely right. I believe that 100%. And until you turn off the spigot, and you say the only way you benefit from our society and the taxpayer-funded services like education, healthcare, or a job, you have to get in line and you have to go through the process. And millions of people are wait for years to do that. And you're right. That's the only way, ultimately, to solve this problem. But just like you have a fence around your house, there are basic components to security that we need in place. And to suggest otherwise is to be completely disconnected or just to be purely political about it. I think it's probably the latter where I find Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi.
Congressman, let's go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we can talk a little bit about what's going on in New York as far as their abortion laws.
You got it.
All right, thanks.
And we are back here on KFYO Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin, and on the phone again, Congressman Jodey Arrington is with us again this morning.
No, Congressman, one of the questions I had about this whole abortion issues, New York just did it. They put a law in, said that they can have abortions all the way up to birth. Same thing. I think Virginia was looking at that. They didn't get it passed, but they were trying to get that through. Are there no restrictions at all at the national level?
No, they're not. We passed out of the House, and I voted for every pro-life measure that we voted on in the House. One was to restrict late-term abortions. I believe, just let me start by saying that I believe life begins at conception. I believe it's a gift from God. I believe they deserve the constitutional right to life, liberty, and happiness. And we're in a situation, and I think Roe v. Wade, which by the way, ruled in error by the Supreme Court, and I hope it's overturned. And that's the fear with these liberals in doing what they're doing. At least that's how Governor Cuomo explained it when he called this new Reproductive Health Care Act. It said basically abortion at any time and any place and by anybody. And he called it socially progressive. It's socially depraved, and I think we're going to see changes at the highest level with the Supreme Court. But at a minimum, I would prefer that we get a ruling that says life begins at conception and has all the rights that every other citizen does. But at a minimum, we should have the states. We should delegate to the states to make those decisions. And, Texas would be firmly a pro-life state. And then at least the states could decide what culture and what values that were consistent with their communities and their families and their citizens. But yeah, we couldn't get the late-term abortion bill out of the Senate. We have a couple of pro-choice Republicans, so it's sick, it's sad. And I share the sentiments of folks that listened with great disgust some of the things that were going on in Virginia, in New York, and other places.
Well, and sadness. I mean, we're literally killing the next generation. I don't see how killing the next generation is considered progressive. I mean, you're supposed to be building something for that next generation. So 60+ million children have been aborted. Their lives have been terminated. I'm like you. I believe that they were killed, and I think when you look at the stains on the moral fabric of this country, certainly I think slavery was one of those.
But this takes this is the depth of depravity, and I think this is the biggest stain, and one that if we don't turn around, I think more so than immigration or health care or various issues, America's great because America's good. Alexis de Tocqueville said that, and he was right. And when we cease to be good, we'll cease to be great. And this is part of the goodness and the sort of values and the moral decay that I think de Tocqueville was referencing. And I agree with him 100%.
Okay, Congressman, we have a little less than a minute. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what happened in the Ways and Means Committee with your first committee hearing?
Well, the Democrats, because they're in charge of the House now, had a hearing on the pre-existing conditions provision in Obamacare. You would have thought that the Affordable Care Act / Obamacare was nothing but protecting people with pre-existing conditions. We know that it was taxing, regulating, mandating, and fining Americans who didn't choose it, and it was a disaster.
Got a hard break coming.
Yep.
Got to run.
Okay.
As always, love it when you're with us, and some great information this morning. Have a great day, Congressman.
You too, guys. Bye-bye.